WBAL radio app.
Sorry, it seems we have something approaching a consensus in this country that there are detrimental effects to social media, particularly when it comes to young people. And the question, we talked a little bit about what TikTok is doing to address some of this earlier on in the show, but the question is, how do you fix this problem? How do you fix the problem of teens suffering from depression as a result of spending too much time on social media and other problems? Well, Caden Rosenbaum is the Technology and Innovation Policy Analyst at Libertas Institute, based in Lehi, Utah. His new article is Don't Ban Teenagers from Social Media. It's from the Washington Examiner's Restoring America. Caden, you're in Utah. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in their legislature and what they're trying to do when it comes to social media.
Sure. So thanks for having me first. So in Utah, there's a big consensus around whether the evidence is super clear, whether there is an actual correlation instead of just cause and effect. We're going to do something. Right? Like that's the consensus. That's the general feeling there, is that we need to be acting to do something. Except the problem, though, that I would push back on is that we're not doing things with really the intention of getting at the core problems. We're just doing something to stop the bleeding, so to speak, just to put a big block on the problem. And so in Utah, what's been happening is we've got a bill in each chamber of the House that's progressed along pretty smoothly. There's one in the House called HB 311, and there's one in the Senate called SB 152. And what it would do, each bill is a little different, but the House bill would ban teenagers under the age of 16 from using social media, and if they're 16 to 18, would require parental consent. And the Senate bill would just say parental consent 18 and down. And these bills at that level are not super dangerous to go against in terms of internet freedom and the rights we have to the internet. Now, the other provisions of these bills are what has people like me concerned, right? Which is that if a 16-year-old goes on social media and the next day they go to the doctor and they find out that they're depressed, there is a presumption that that teenager was harmed by being on social media. Whether the parent gave consent or not, that's the presumption of harm. And then the parent can go and sue and say, I'm not going to get to the heart of my kid's problem. I'm going to sue social media because it's obviously that, right? The Senate bill is a little bit less onerous than that. But there is this consensus among Utah legislators that's reflected in these bills that social media is something that's addictive and not something that can be beneficial to kids trying to connect with other kids.
Yeah, and I have so many questions about the logistics, specifically about the first part about how you verify all that. It's just, I'm a software guy, so I can't even imagine what that would look like. But I will ask you this, as part of the ongoing discussion here, understanding the way that social media, companies craft their content and the AI that's used to create compelling content, doesn't that give some credence to the concern that the explicit efforts to keep people hooked on these platforms is something that could be a risk to young people?
That's actually the central argument, and I think this is something Jonathan Haidt brought up. Jonathan Haidt, for anyone listening in who doesn't know, has been studying the psychological effects of a lot of things, including social media, and its possible correlation to depression. And he wrote this really great piece in The Atlantic, which was that he was using the fabled Tower of Babel, and Jonathan Haidt's a really good writer, just to put that out there. And what he said was that, social media, like the Tower of Babel, is this great testament to who we are, but it bats us ultimately. And he links the causation of social media to depression in kids. And I think that's an easy step to get to, right? Because these algorithms are they are set up to tailor content to you, to whatever you like. They will try to find more content that's related to that, and they'll learn from you. But I think that that's one angle that social media is good for, right? Which is scrolling through Reels and TikToks like I do. But then there's the other angle, which is connecting with your friends. They're sharing information about what's going on. And there's learning about what's outside the world from whatever town or place that you live in. And I think that that's also an important component of this. And while the Reels and the TikTok scrolling is definitely something that hooks people, like myself included, I don't know that it hooks people to the point that we should start banning it, right? It's not like cigarettes, which are going to put tar in your lungs over the next 20 years and have you wheezing. I live in New York now, and I get these commercials of the effects of harmful cigarette use in long term. There's the guy wheezing. It's really hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's not to that point, though, what content is, right? It's something else. It's just something we watch for entertainment, like we would a television 20 years ago. So I think that there is an easy argument to make there, but I don't know that there's a lot of weight to the harm part of all of that.
Oh, okay, so how do you fix the problem, though? I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to, and you argue in your article, you're not going to be able to limit all access to social media for young people. They're going to find a way to get on there one way or the other. What do you focus on instead in order to solve the problem?
You know, I think that one of the really key parts of this is parental involvement in education. I brought this up. I was testifying against these bills in one of the committees, and they finally let me have more than 1 minute to speak, which is fair. That's their prerogative. But let me have more than 1 minute, and I brought up this idea. I said, what if we just told parents how to share passwords with their kids so they could check in, they could set time limits, you know? And I thought that was pretty fair. But then I want to say he's a school administrator, comes up and says, frankly, that's ridiculous. And I thought, well, I mean, that's your opinion. This is mine. I get that there are no really, really good silver bullet solutions. But I think that there are reasonable steps. Like, I don't know. I didn't hear in what you were talking about with TikTok, but on TikTok, I noticed that there is the 60-minute timer that you could set for your kids. I think that's huge.
Okay.
That's like parental controls. I think that there's also just helping parents understand how to tell their kids about the harms that they could find on social media.
Yeah. No, I was actually, you might have just been getting to this, but I'm also curious, and Dan and I discussed this a lot. I think that what people are afraid of is simply a changing culture, right? It's not that things are necessarily harmful or dangerous. It's just different. Do you see any benefits to this new digital era and what social media is a part of that? Do you see that as something that could potentially be helpful and change the way that humanity processes information going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's this really clear disconnect between myself and millennial, and my younger sister is a Gen Z. She's only 5 years apart from me, but there's this clear difference between us. That she has grown up into a world that is even different from mine, and we both grew up into the internet. And I think one of the clear differences is that she is, on her face, empathetic towards people's problems and towards learning about issues out in the world. And I'm a little bit more skeptical. You know, I want to learn more before I get into the meat of what is happening and before I say, okay, I feel for you, right? I think that that's a good thing. I think that that's a good advancement in society and how we deal with problems. And then there's this other characteristic of the internet and social media that we can point out problems that may not be evident to other people. We can show, like, with Black Lives Matter, and I know that some people are going to be hostile towards it, but I think that was a big moment to say, hey, maybe you didn't think about this before because you've never encountered a stop without probable cause, but you know, this is something that's happening to me, and here's my experience. I think that was really important to convey to other people who have not had that experience. And that's a positive effect that we've seen with social media. And if that's a change in culture, if that's a change in generational, societal experience, I think that that's a good thing. It's progress instead of a step backwards.
Caden Rosenbaum, you are the Technology and Innovation Policy Analyst at Libertas Institute, and your article is Don't Ban Teenagers from Social Media. You can find that on Restoring America. Thank you so much for joining us today, Caden.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a great discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me.